Well, good evening, everybody. Back again for the third night to do a little bit of reading out of April morning for about a half hour, and then again we'll chat politics a little later on. We might have a guest speaker with us, a special guest with us tonight, but we'll see as we get closer to 9:30. So last night we were reading about young Adam and his father, and their relationship continued to. Uh, we've seen it's started to heat up a little bit. Granny, as she's called, has gotten involved a little bit more, and father went to a committee meeting. So in U.S. history, we talked about now the colonies are starting to talk to one another. People are starting to come together and talk, and they do it in these committees of correspondence. And then the committees start talking to one another throughout all the 13 colonies. So that's what his father has just attended. And they've talked about part of what they've done is kicked out one of the members because one of the members of the committee was dealing in slavery. So we'll pick it up. That was no mean feat, talking about expelling one of the committee members. And while most people accepted my father's position on moral grounds, the profits and slaver shares were enormous. Only one ship in three brought its cargo through, but when it did, the returns for the investor were magnificent. The ship the Simmons brothers had invested in came through, making them rich, as some folk considered riches, and they took the money and opened an ironworks in Connecticut. But Joseph Simmons broke with them and remained a smith in our village. He was a mild man, and you would never know of it, that he could be so adamant on a moral question. I, for one, have not found very much to admire in moral men. But he was the exception to the rule. His brothers were dead in his eyes. He would never speak about them or refer to them in any way. Lately, the British had ruined the iron business with their prohibitions, import laws, and colonial taxes. And it had come to our knowledge that the four Simmons brothers had joined their local committee and were real firebrands. But they had made no difference to Joseph. As for father, he never spoke openly about the various elements that went into the committees for various reasons, some of them less than noble, but I knew his opinion. He didn't hold them highly. When I got to the Simmons place, and now he's talking about spending time with Ruth Simmons, the kitchen after work was done, and Mrs. Simmons and her widow, sister Susan, were sitting at the kitchen table reading Job aloud from the Bible. They were both of them sad ladies who dispensed smiles as if they were shillings, and they were strongly given to their Bible and to do things like Job and Jeremiah and Nahum. It wasn't that they were unpleasant people, indeed. They were the sweetest things ever. They just enjoyed melancholy and seemed to take heart and spirits from it. As I came in, Mrs. Simmons looked up and said, "Why, Adam Cooper, what a pleasant surprise," just as if she had not already seen me twice this day. The widow's sister went to the cupboard and cut me a piece of sweet carrot pie. She was stronger for actions than for her words. "I just finished supper. Adam, that's my sweet carrot pie." "Yes, ma'am," I nodded and began to eat. It wasn't an effort at all. "Adam has the finest reading voice," the widow's sister said. Miss Simmons nodded. "I remarked on that many times." "We were reading from Job," the widow's sister said. "No matter how many times I read Job, I never fail to have a new insight. Do you find that it can be that case with yourself, Adam?" I had not paid much attention to Job lately, and mumbled something to that effect. As long as I kept my mouth full, they would accept anything I said. "A shame. Such a shame," the widow's sister said gently. "When we close our eyes, we are like the blind. I'm sure Adam would not willfully close his eyes." "Not willfully, sister, but it happens." "It would be nice," said Miss Simmons, "if after Adam finishes his pie, he would read to us aloud. It need not be Job. It could be Judges. I do think that there's more in Judges to interest a young man than in Job." I appreciated her calling me a young man instead of a boy, and I also appreciated her substitution of Judges for Job. In its own way, Judges may be heavy going, but it does have a good battle scene or two, and it's just a sleigh ride compared to Job. But the last thing I wanted to do tonight was to spend it with a Bible reading. And I could have kissed Ruth when she came down just in time to get me out of the whole thing. Like the other women, Ruth is perhaps a trifle over gentle, but she has a mind of her own and she knows when to use it. She made no bones about letting them know that I had come over to see her and that we were going to take a walk in the moonlight. It may seem strange that a church going and pious woman like Miss Simmons would offer no objection to Ruth and myself walking after darkness. But Mrs. Simmons held that less was likely to happen at nighttime when the grass was wet with dew and cold and clammy, that in the dry day under a hot sun. She was right. All that happened between Ruth and me that evening was that we talked and held hands and kissed once. Ruth was 3 months younger than I, and I had known her since I had known anybody. When we were 13 years old, she asked me whether I had decided whom I intended to marry, and I replied that I hadn't given them much thought, since it did not appear to be particularly pressing. She was a little shocked at that, and I have since recognized that girls begin to brood upon these questions considerably before boys do. So maybe back in colonial America, girls were more mature than boys, even back then. I have a feeling that's true, because we know that it's true today. She, it appeared, had already thought the matter through and picked me, because she had always loved me and saw no reason why she could not continue to do so. After that, I had a few nervous days, but when I talked it over with Granny, she pointed out that empires could rise and fall because before I came of marrying age and had to give the problem serious attention. I was vague on the process of empires, not exactly sure what they consisted of, but nevertheless I was greatly relieved. It fell into the category of death from overeating, a fate I had been warned about on numerous occasions, but which was far enough in the future not to trouble my sleep. In the 2 years since then, Ruth changed considerably. She brought up the subject of matrimony less and less frequently, and finally dropped it entirely. At 13, she had been a skinny kid who, if not downright ugly, gave the general impression of two pale blue eyes behind a mass of freckles. She also ran to red elbows, skin knees, and overlarge bony hands. Since then, she had filled out very nicely. The elbows shaded down, and the bones were not noticeable. Her red hair, instead of flying wild like a mop upended, was gathered on her neck and highly admired by all sorts of people. There were times when I found myself looking at her and thinking that she was beautiful. I admit that my own attitude towards girls had changed, and there began to be occasions when I would say to Ruth, "What I don't understand is why not? If you're going to marry me anyways, you wouldn't understand because you're a boy and I'm a girl. My goodness, would I be pressing you for that kind of thing if I was a girl? I should hope not. And anyway, Adam Cooper, it's a long time since I said anything about marrying you. You haven't changed your mind? Well, I don't know. The things you're always after, I just don't know. I wonder what he's after. But on this night, she seemed genuinely glad to see me. We got out of the house and walked down the lane towards the pump house. Then we turned towards the little grove of trees where Lyman's pig pen was, and we passed Mrs. Spencer, who said, "Out walking, are you, Adam?" The way she made it sounded totally sinful. "Yes, ma'am." Well, she could do a lot with one word. I had an opinion for her, but Ruth, she had suffered from an after-meal dyspepsia and had to walk around in the darkness to get the gas up. And it was a known fact that people with her condition were shorter and meaner than they had to be. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry," I replied to Miss Spencer. We walked on, and Ruth remarked that she saw no reason for my apologizing to Mrs. Spencer. "I suppose I'm just in the habit," I said. "I apologize to most anyone these days, and I'm pretty sick and tired of the whole thing, I can tell you." There's no use to get morbid about it, Adam. I don't really care what you say to Goody Spencer or what she thinks. Have you been having a fight with your father again? Whoops, I think I skipped 2 pages. Nope, I didn't. Still, what? Not again. Still, it's just one long affair. You'd think he'd want an hour here or there to rest himself from telling me what a useless, misbegotten thing I am. Not him, no, sir. It's like bread and butter to him. He thrives on it. How many teenagers have a parent that just likes to fight with them about everything? Seems again like something that happened in the colonial period is happening still today. Oh, Adam, it's not that bad at all, Ruth said. Just tonight, I asked him as pleasant and respectful as possible whether I could go to the committee meeting with him. Oh, no. When I was a man, I could go. And he made it plain to me what he thought about me being a man. Your pa was there, and believe me, I was never so humiliated in all my life. But you know about how pa doesn't pay any attention to what Cousin Moses says. Gideon Perkins is 3 days younger than I am, and he's been attending committee meetings since Christmas time. But wouldn't you rather be out walking with me, Adam? Ruth asked, taking my arm. If you were at that silly committee meeting, you wouldn't be out here walking, would you? I suppose not. Well, there. That doesn't make any sense, Ruth, I told her. That doesn't solve one blessed thing. Adam Cooper, what do you expect to solve? You're only 15 years old. Why don't you have enough patience to wait a few years and let things take their proper and natural course? Maybe I will and maybe I won't. What does that mean? She asked impatiently. Ruth Simmons had set ideas about what was fit conversation and action for a walking out at nighttime, and this was not according to form. You know about my Uncle Ishmael Jameson, the smuggler who keeps the colored wife in Jamaica? Now that's a fine way to talk, Ruth Simmons. That's just a real fine way to talk. That shows a real profound knowledge of politics. Yes, it does. Just as if there were a master sales out in Boston without carrying a little contraband here and there. I suppose you'd want all our people to sit back and starve to death the way the British Lord says we should. Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. We'll just wither away and please your excellencies and go ahead and take our churches and put in your priests, and we'll all get down on your knees before the Episcopal lords and parade them to death. Well, I never, she interrupted. Indeed, I never in all my born days, Adam Cooper. And as far as my Uncle Ishmael is concerned, said Adam, there's not a word of truth in that story about him having a colored wife in Jamaica. Who cares, she cried. And whoever gave you the right to snap me fit to bite my nose off? I didn't snap at you. You, Ruth says, he could have 7 wives. He could have one living with every loose woman in Kingston. For all that I care, just make certain of that, Adam Cooper. I'm not like some folks. I can name who I will say the first thing they hear about someone else behind his back. Meaning me, said Adam. No, not meaning you. You don't have any more sense than a dried pumpkin. It was you called him a smuggler and a bigamist, wasn't it? Boy, I don't know the last time I was called a dry pumpkin. That really upset me. I guess that might be the new hip thing to say to people, call them a dry pumpkin. You really upset them. I did not. I simply identified him. For all I know, you could have had 5 Uncle Ishmaels. It's not likely. Maybe it isn't. But it's a fine thing to have friends who can't trust you not to be a bigot. That was when I kissed her. We were standing alongside the Hyman's well house, which sits behind their herb gardens. And there was just enough starlight and nightlight for me to see her face. And it was hazy and lovely and only half real. And for a moment it appeared to me that she had the most beautiful woman's face I had ever seen in all my living days. Not a girl's face, Not the face of Ruth Simmons or anyone else I had known all my life, but the lovely face of a lovely stranger. When I kissed her, I felt that my heart would tear through my chest for excitement and wonder. Then I felt a good, empty sickness. If you can speak of anything in such contradictory terms. Why did you do that? Ruth whispered. I don't know. Adam Cooper, if you aren't the strangest boy. First, you're yelling and screaming at me as if the heavens were known of what, and you're like to tear me to pieces. Then, without so much as by your leave, you kiss me. I nodded, and she asked me why I was looking at her that way. What way? The way you're looking at me. Well, I just don't know. I wanted to tell her how beautiful she was, but how can you tell a girl something like that? And it didn't explain the way I was looking at her because I didn't know how I was looking at her. You seem to have forgotten all about your Uncle Ismael, she said. Oh, no, no, no. At that point, Miss Hyman opened her back door and called out, Is that your voice I hear, Adam Cooper? I should think you'd have somewhere better to do this evening than poking around well houses. So we walked again. And at that moment, we had come over, what had come over me before had faded. And Ruth was Ruth, and looking pretty much as she had at her mother's kitchen. I told her how my Uncle Ishmael had offered me a place on a ship. Of course he would. He'd be glad to get you instead of the trash he picks up on the dockside. That's not a very flattering thing to say. Adam Cooper, I was just teasing you, if I must spell it out. You surely can't be serious about going to sea. I don't know about that, said Adam. Well, you can't. Your father would never let you. Well, maybe it's time I just went out and did something without telling my father or having my father let me or not letting me do something. Adam! Well, why not? Would it make a difference to you? Yes, she replied. Yes, it would. I suppose I'd be the loneliest girl in Massachusetts if you went away. When she said that, I felt warm and good and content for the first time in days. I took her hand in mine. Her hand was small and soft, and the fingers twined themselves into mine. We walked down to the end of the lane and then back to her house. When I got back to the house, I went into the kitchen, and there was my brother Levi sitting in the front of the hearth, cleaning my fowling piece with an oily rag. I let him know for what, and who gave him the right to touch my gun, much less clean it. Didn't he realize that he didn't have enough sense to clean a gun? I told him he could, Mother said. Well, suppose it was loaded. He could blow his head off. Wouldn't you like that? Levi grinned. It wasn't loaded, Mother said. And if it wasn't dirty and gathering rust spots, Levi wouldn't be cleaning it. It sometimes seems to me, Adam, that you could take better care of your things. Your shoes will rot off your feet before you take some grease to them. And if I left it to you to change your shirt and pants, I don't think you'd take them off from season to season. I hate to scold you, I really do. It would be interesting to see what it would be like here if you enjoyed scolding me. Adam, I don't appreciate sarcasm. I'm sorry, Mother. The point is that Levi was trying to do something for you. He felt that you blamed him for what happened at the table, and he was trying to make it up to you. That's the blessed truth, Granny put in. Levi sat on the edge of the hearth, looking downright virtuous. I shrugged and sat down next to him and showed him how to cloth the ramrod properly for full cleaning. Adam, Levi said, what would happen if you loaded this here gun with a musket ball instead of birdshot? I don't know. I've never thought of that. It's got a larger bore than a regular musket ball would fill. But if you put an extra large ball in it, you'd have to put an extra large powder load in it. And the skin of the gun maybe isn't strong enough to bear it. You might just blow yourself up. That's the trouble with a fowling piece. When I get me a gun, it's going to be a rifle, said Levi. Ha! That's just like you. Always talking when you don't know a thing. Of course not. You know everything. So there isn't anything left for anyone else to know. Ha! A teenager thinking that he knows everything. Geez, I don't think I've heard that before. Of course not. Oh, I'm sorry. At least I know a little something about guns. Why, you couldn't even load a rifle. You got to hammer the charge home, and then when you do that, what are you going to find around here that you could hit with a rifle? Chicken hawk, squirrel, partridge, rabbit? Why, if you had any sense at all, you'd know that it's precisely why a fowling piece was invented. I know one thing I could hit with a rifle. You tell me, says Adam. A redcoat soldier, Levi said. He said slowly and seriously, and Mother turned to us from where she was sewing at the table with Granny and said somberly, Levi, that's not the way anyone in this house talks. All I said was, I know exactly what you said. We don't talk about killing people in our house. We don't speculate upon it. We don't derive satisfaction from such inhumane speculation. My goodness, you'd think I was the only one, Levi cried. There isn't a boy in school who don't keep score of how many redcoat soldiers he's going to get by himself when he's going to kill by himself when the war comes. That's enough, Mother said. I haven't raised my children by the yardstick of boys in school, and I don't intend to begin now. We are not savages or barbarians, and we do not go to church to seek instruction in the art of killing. Now, both of you put that gun away and march up to bed. I never opened my mouth, I protested. Both of you, Adam. It's close enough to bedtime in any case. I'm 4 years older than Levi. What sense does it make for both of us to go to bed at the same time? I'm not disposed to argue, Mother said. That way, she wasn't different from Father. He would have proved that it was right and proper for both of us to go to bed at the same time. I'm not, sorry. And we walked upstairs. As we walked upstairs, I told Levi, among a dozen other things wrong with you, you never know when to keep your mouth shut. I was a long time falling asleep that night and lying there with both doors open. I heard Father come in, and I heard his report to Mother concerning what had happened at the committee meeting. I've already sat down there. When we finished talking about the committee, she told him about the incident with the gun. I shouldn't have said what I said, Mother sighed. At least not that way. Adam is still a boy. Just because he's so tall and strong, we get thinking about him as a man. It's time he brought about being a man, Father put it. We could help them both towards that. How? We've given him a good home, good food, good clothes, and an education. And if all goes well, he can go to college and board out with Aunt Martha in Cambridge. It doesn't seem to me that you can give a boy much more than that. Perhaps it isn't enough, Moses, said Mother. How? My father demanded. Well, he seems to have gotten the idea that you hate him. Hate him? My father exploded. Of all the crazy notions, of all the idiotic idea. There, a boy, my firstborn. Why? How could any man love a son any more than I love that boy? Now, where could he have gotten this unreasonable idea? He could have gotten it from you, Granny said. I really like Granny. She's my favorite character so far. Now, see here. I won't have you both turning against me. It doesn't mean a thing. You know the way boys are. I was somewhat sharp with him at the table, but boys get over that kind of thing. I'm old enough and wise enough now to thank the good God that my father never spared me the rod and spoiled me the child. Age and wisdom don't go together as often as you might think, Granny said. And as for your father, Moses Cooper, I knew him better than anyone ever will. Abraham Cooper had many fine qualities, something I will not deny. But he was as pig-headed and stubborn and enamored as the sound of his own voice as you are. Granny, you're being too hard on Moses, Mother put in. Oh, no, not at all, Goody Cooper. Like yourself, I was married to a Cooper, so I had double experience. Now you two can go on and make anything out of this idea that you wish. I shouldn't be interfering anyways, because it's provoking enough to have a mother-in-law in the home without her telling you how to raise up your children. I've said what I've had to say. Good night to the both of you. They knew better than to interrupt or stop Granny when she began to talk like that, and they sat quietly while she stamped upstairs. When, She passed my door, I whispered. Granny. And you, Adam Cooper, she hissed. Don't go thinking because that I scold my own son, I'm on your side. I love you anyway, I whispered. When I was young, a boy had modesty and decency, two qualities that seem to have disappeared today. She went on past into her room, and everything became so silent that I could hear the ticking of the big old clock on the staircase. Then from below, his voice considerably chastened my mother. Well, Sarah, she is my mother. I don't see how it gives her the right to talk to you the way she does. You're a grown man, not a boy. She doesn't mean anything by it. Well, it's disrespect. I will not budge an inch from that. You're the man of the house. I said before, and I say again, it's very certainly disrespectful. There were a few minutes of silence, and after that, Father said, Come to think about it, I have been hard on the boy. That doesn't mean I don't love him. You know how much he means to me? Of course I do, said Mother. I mean, I got to disabuse him of that notion. Moses, if you keep building it up in your mind that way, you won't sleep a wink tonight. I just don't understand how he could form a notion that I don't care for him. You said yourself that those things don't last. Now, give me a book and I'll read to you. I heard Father get up and go into the sitting room, and at that moment or two later, in that high, clear, school marm voice that she uses for reading aloud, Mother gave chapter 4 of Pilgrim's Progress, which rated almost as highly in our house as the Bible, and most of which I knew by heart. I fell asleep to the sound of her voice. My eyes were wet and my throat thick and full. But I think I felt better as I fell asleep than I had in a very long time. The night. I don't believe in dreams. That is, I don't believe that dreams about any more than tossing around the things that worry and provoke a body during his waking hours. Other folk are different and set a great store by dreams, picking them apart and developing them to distraction. I don't recall any event of importance, whether it was old man Higgins having a stroke or the time a fox got into the Fitz's chickens and killed 11 of them. That didn't produce a host of soothsayers, all claiming to have dreamed every detail in advance. I guess that if it proves anything, it only proves that what with everybody dreaming every night, there's always something for any occasion. And thinking about it, I will admit that at this point of view came from my father. Father liked to describe himself as a Christian Judaic materialist. He held that if he had just been named a Christian, it was likely to take on at least some aspects of partnership with the Church of England. The Church of England was one of those things, one of those very few things, I should say, that he couldn't argue about. Not that he wasn't willing, but 10 words after he began, his face flushed, his neck thickened, and he became near apoplectic. His mind ceased to function, and as Granny put it, the worst elements of his father and grandfather emerged in him. There was a time when he could hardly get started on a subject without dragging in the Church of England. But since Mother had some high church relatives on her father's side, he broke himself of that habit. Granny said that to call himself Judaic when he had never actually met a Jew was impertinence. So when some family business took him to Rhode Island, he went out of his way to attend services at a synagogue. Father said that apart from the fact that they kept their hats on in church and read from the Bible in Hebrew, something he had always aspired to, they didn't seem any different from Presbyterians. While there, he could resist getting their views on certain moot points of theology, such as the relationship of the Trinity to monotheism, and the balance of the first 5 books of the Bible against what follows. Not only did he emerge with a healthy respect for their powers of disputation, but he boasted of their admiration for his own powers of argumentation. So what they're talking about here, guys, is part of what our country was founded on Roger Williams brought to our country this belief that there should be a separation of church and state, and many people brought to our country, as they were colonies, that we should be able to freely practice whatever religion we want. So, father, right, Moses Cooper, probably he and his father both have Jewish names, so he probably does have some kind of admiration, and he understands that Christianity comes from Judaism, and that's why he's got some appreciation for it. I'm going to read a couple more paragraphs, and then we'll get into current events. As for the materialism, Father held it was the only way to counter superstition properly, and high among the various superstitions that were the arrhythma to Father was the so-called interpretation of dreams. I remembered an argument he had with Jonas Parker. Ever since Jonas Parker had been elected captain of militia for the township, things went less smoothly between himself and my father. Father taking the point of view that the chairmanship of the committee had precedence over all other titles of authority. Jonas Parker, with some justice on his side, said that a military situation demanded that the chain of the militia be the supreme command at the moment of military crisis. You can imagine how my father rose to this. He hated all things military and immediately accused Parker of desiring the prime goal of the enemy, to turn us into a garrison state. The argument was hot and heavy, with no clear-cut decision. Father awaited his moment. A day came when Parker announced militia drill for the following evening. My father reminded him that a strong wet wind was blowing in from the east, and that even in New England, where the weather was erratic enough to drive a prudent man mad, a steady wet east wind meant rain. Well, up comes Parker with a particularly strong dream about the next day's weather being fair as feathers, with a blue sky everywhere you looked. Now, if that doesn't signify good weather, what does? He demanded to Father. A dry west wind, Father replied. It rained that night and for the 2 following days, and Father had a time rending every theory of dreams into shreds. I agreed with him about dreams. So when my brother Levi ran into the room and dived into bed with me, trembling with fear over a nightmare, I was not disturbed, except that I resented being awakened in the middle of the night. And with that, my friends, I think we'll call it a day. I think that something is on the horizon, and for those of you guys that paid attention in class, you probably know what it is. So good job. We're getting there with April Morning. We're just about to the fighting. In 3 days, we've read 53 pages. So 53 pages. So we're doing good. We're doing very good. I'm going to mark that in my journal. All right. So as I said at the start of going live, we have a special guest with us tonight. And this is my oldest son, Aiden. And
Hi.
Aiden is growing a beard like me. And but I think he's a little better looking. So anyways,
yes, that's true.
That is true. So I'm going to give a little bit of a rundown. Is Mackenzie? Oh, of course, Sydney. Is Mackenzie here tonight? I wonder if Mackenzie's on, because I looked up the Lions in Russia, and I bet you she didn't make it on tonight. Well, Mackenzie had she had asked about this thing. Apparently, someone had tweeted in Russia that Vladimir Putin was going to release lions on the streets to keep people off the streets. And what I did find is that, yes, this is true. Somebody had tweeted it, but that is not what Vladimir Putin did. There are not lions running around the streets of Moscow, and people are like fighting them off with bottles of vodka. But the tweet did go around, and I guess it did worry a lot of people. But what I did find is what Vladimir Putin did say, and he's made it clear, they are on a 15-day lockdown in Russia. And if anyone is caught out violating that lockdown, there's not going to be any discussion. They're going to jail for 5 years. So things in Russia have really, I guess you could say the belt is kind of tightened in Russia, and they're taking this very seriously. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, and I did find some good stuff. It's not just bad stuff. But both Korea and Israel are using social networking, and they're using cell phones to track people. So after 9/11, the United States government passed the Patriot Act, and that allowed the government to take a look at our cell phone calls or listen in on our cell phone calls, to take a look at our Facebook posts, our texts, scan our emails, and all that kind of stuff. And why? Well, after 9/11, we were very worried about more terror attacks. So the federal government passed this law to try to protect us. And other countries have done similar things. But now these governments are using that, well, not the law we passed, they passed their own laws, to track the movement of people through their cell phones to make sure that they're social distancing. So, Aiden,
yes.
What do you think? Do you think that Aiden, by the way, is I think that he probably knows more than a lot of the adults around me about what's going on in the world. And, so I asked him to come and share some thoughts tonight. His opinions, we should have made a little banner. His opinions are not necessarily my opinions, but, having a young person talk about some of these things, I thought might be cool. So, Aiden, do you think that the government has the right to track people's cell phones, to, spy on our emails and monitor us that way, take away a little bit of privacy to give us more safety?
No.
Okay, there you go. Well, why not? Let's hear it.
I think privacy. I think if we are really a free society, we have to be entitled to a certain amount of privacy. And I think that with the technology, we could certainly use the email tracking, the cellular tracking, or whatever. It should be like the same as searching someone's house. Like, you have to get a warrant. And if someone is a suspected terrorist, then sure, you can data mine or do whatever. You can do whatever you want. But if someone is not a suspect, you shouldn't be able to just do whatever you want.
Innocent before proven guilty.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Until proven guilty. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So, some more news. 9 Amazon plants. Now, about a week ago, Amazon announced that they were not being ordered by the government, but they were closing down operations. So this was a week ago. They're still open. And today, Amazon has confirmed that at 9 of their plants, they have multiple employees that have tested positive with the coronavirus. So, I know we need all of our stuff, and we like our next day prime shipping, but I was very surprised to hear. I didn't realize that Amazon was still rocking and rolling. Today, our cases in New York, we've hit over 30,000. So yesterday we were just under 26,000. We've added like 4,700 to that total. We're still well in the lead across the country. I think the total number of Americans that have been testing positive has hit about 80,000.
It's getting up there.
Right. It's close to 80,000. 30,000 are in New York alone. So our governor has still, is still very strong in saying that the federal government needs to step in and help us state by state. And because We are what he's calling the epicenter of this. He wants a lot of aid to come to us. So here's something I'm very interested to see what Aiden thinks, and of course, what you guys think. Back in January, and I know we've talked about this in class, more probably in PIG than in U.S. history. But when you are in the House of Representatives or you are in the Senate, you you serve in committees, and all of those committees have certain topics that they'll cover, right? So, for instance, if I became a senator, if I was one of the senators from New York State in the United States Senate, I would probably be on the Education Committee, right? I would be on. I don't think they have an awesome committee, but if they did, I'd probably be the chairman. But I would go on to the Education Committee, right? They'd look at what I have some expertise in, and that's where they would put me. So, anyways, back to what I want to ask and see what Aiden thinks about. 4 members of a committee that were given information in January about the coronavirus from President Trump. Not long after that meeting, these 4 senators, Kelly Loeffler, a Republican from Georgia, James Inhofe, a Republican from Oklahoma, Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat from California, and Richard Burr, a Republican from North Carolina, all went and sold stock because of the information that they had received in this meeting. So basically, what they did is they knew that stock they owned was going to decrease in price once that information became public. So they sold that stock to save themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars. Kelly Loeffler actually went out and bought stock in companies that specialize in working from home. And she has apparently, along with Richard Burr, earned hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in this quick sale. So this is what's, in a way, insider trading. You can't use private information to manipulate the stock market. And specifically, the Stock Act was passed, which basically said if you're in government, if you're in the House of Representatives, if you're in the federal government, you cannot, or in the Senate, you cannot do this. This is a clear violation. So, Aiden, my question for you is, should these 4 senators resign? Should they be prosecuted? Should they resign?
I think if this information had been made public at that time, and then they sold the stocks, I would see no problem with it. But since it was kind of insider information, I think and like you said, it clearly violates the law, then I think they should have either made it public and then did it, or not have done it.
Well, like any good politician, you didn't answer my question. Should they resign? Should they be asked to resign, forced to resign?
I'm not really sure. I mean,
they are going to be prosecuted. A lawsuit has already been filed against Richard Burr. It was filed, I believe, yesterday. But this is one of those reasons, my friends, that we need to pay attention to what's happening in government. Too many people don't pay attention to their representatives. These people got rich off a tragedy, a circumstance that's ripping our world apart. And what these people did was, instead of warning us, they went out and they made money off of it.
Did they have the authority to warn us, or were they not allowed?
More than likely, no, they weren't allowed, but they didn't have a problem using that information to get rich. So this is what Martha Stewart did. This is why Martha Stewart went to jail. Martha Stewart was given information, I think, from her son-in-law. I don't remember who. I think it was her son-in-law. And Martha Stewart, her son-in-law worked for like a pharmaceutical company, and she knew that that stock was going to take a dive. So she she faxed her stockbroker and said, or the financial company that she dealt with, and said, sell the stock now. And she faxed it. So a record of that fax was found, and the government prosecuted her. And she should have gone to jail for 10 to 12 years, but she spent 18 months in prison, and then I think a year with an ankle bracelet, something like that. So the big news today is the federal government is this close to that stimulus deal. It started at about $800 billion. So here's the deal. This is the plan that we're going to enact to try to save the country, to try to save the economy. We've talked about all over our state, all over our country, all over the world, people are weighing two things. Is the economy more important, or is the health of our state, country, whatever, more important? So obviously we're starting to do this social distancing. We're flattening the curve. We're trying to keep as much distance to try to keep the to slow the spread of this disease. But a lot of people have to stay home from work. So the federal government is especially worried about businesses. And here's what they've got. The plan is now $2.2 trillion. So it started out around I think it was 883 billion is what it started as. Now it's up to $2.2 trillion. And it's got to be passed in the Senate still. It's close. And then the House of Representatives said that they would vote on it within 24 hours of the Senate passing it. They will have a vote. Speaker Nancy Pelosi said they will have a vote. So if you are a small business, what they're talking about is this. The federal government is going to help you. So let's talk about Rotterdam. What's a small business? Nicky P's, right? Let's say a small business like Nicky P's. Better yet, how about one of our salons, one of our hair salons in Rotterdam, or even a small garage or something like that, mechanic's garage. If these small businesses agree to pay their employees, we're going to keep paying you. The federal government is going to guarantee them a loan to help them stay open. And what the Treasury, the head of the Treasury said today, and I'm sorry I forget his name. Do you know his name?
Mnuchin.
There you go, Mnuchin. He said that you could, as a small business, get the money the same day you apply for the loan. That's how quick they want to get the money out there. Out of that $2.2 trillion, 367 billion is going to be dedicated for small businesses. Now, here's where we come in, okay? What they are talking about doing is, if your annual salary in 2018 was less than $99,000, so if you made less than $100,000 in 2018, the federal government is going to, boom, that was horrible snap. Another horrible snap. They're going to, boom, put $1,200 into your bank account. And they're talking about trying to get that out in the next few weeks. So if you were in 2018, you had a job, you made less than $99,000 that year, bam, you get $1,200. They're also talking about all this money. $130 billion is going to go directly to hospitals to help them pay for everything that's happening. Unemployment in our country right now is going to be extended out. So I believe currently you can collect unemployment for 20 weeks. No, that seems no. Now it's going to be extended out to 20 weeks. I don't know what it's set at right now. It's obviously less, but they're going to push it out. So you can now stay on unemployment for 4 months. In California alone, just to put this into perspective, 1 million people have already lost their jobs in California because of the coronavirus. 1 million people in one state. So that's why the federal government is stepping up to do this. $25 billion is going to be of that 2.2 trillion is going to go to airlines. So if you think about how many people are canceling vacations, aren't going to be traveling, aren't allowed to travel because of what's happening, the airline industry is starting to feel the pain. The other things that are going to be a part of this big bill is military spending. The president said today that we had what had happened to our military stores?
Depleted.
Right. So the president said our military supplies in this country had been depleted. So part of this money is going to go to rebuilding our military stores. So, couple things. We can't print this money, we got to borrow it. But we borrowed this money, or are going to borrow this money to help American workers. So, should we be adding things in, like adding money to the military budget? Is that something we should be adding in here? And should we really be doing this? Should we borrow all this money, which one day we're going to have to pay back? Our national debt is over $20 trillion already. It's your generation that's going to end up having to pay this off. Aiden, should we do it? Should we put this bill together and pass it? If you were President Aiden, would you sign this bill? Yes or no, and why?
I think the bill as it currently is, no.
Uh-oh. Let's hear it. Chop it up.
What President Trump said about the military stores being depleted, I think that, and our need to rebuild, even if the statement about our military being depleted was true, I hardly think that's a priority at the moment. I think if we're going to, I think the focus should be on helping small businesses, especially because they're the ones I think hurting at the moment. They require foot traffic, and you can't really order online from small businesses like Amazon and Google. They're going to be fine through all this. They'll lose $10 million out of how many billions they make a year.
A day.
Sure,
absolutely.
And so the bill as it is now, no, there would have to be some adjustments.
Right. And I know that in New York State alone, we're talking about 10,000 small businesses. And that was as of a few years ago. One of the things that happens to our federal government and the lawmaking process is this thing called pork barreling. And what that means is to try to get votes. The people that have created the bill will add things, right? So if I was going to pass a bill, let's see here. Let's see if I can pick Aiden's brain. I wanted to pass a bill to or predict a bill that he might say no on. Okay, here we go. We're going to create a law in New York State lowering the drinking age to 16. State Senator Aiden, would you vote for it?
No.
No. So I go back to State Senator Aden and I say, so State Senator Aden, in the Drinking Age Act, I am going to add $300 million to be put into education programs in New York State. Do I have your vote then?
No.
No. Oh boy, he's a tough sell. All right, here's what we're going to do, Senator Aden. We'll back it off. We're going to make the drinking age 18. I'm going to put $400 million into education. And what else could we do here? Oh, anybody that graduates from high school with an 85 average or above gets free tuition to a SUNY school. Senator Aden, do I have your vote?
You do.
That's it. Now, some of you are probably saying, hey, Bella, how are you? Some of you are probably saying, that sounds like bribery.
It is.
It's not bribery. Well,
it's not technical bribery.
It's right. It's not technical bribery. It's called pork barreling. So we, in our country, the way we pass laws is exactly what Aden and I did, right? I want to pass a bill. I want a bill to go to the governor. I want a bill to go to the president, and I don't have the votes. So what I need to do is I need to sweeten the pot to get somebody to vote for me. So that's what we do. And that's what's happening to this bill right now, is that people want to see money go out to small businesses, to big businesses, to people's hands. And but there are people out there who are saying, there are members of the House of Representatives, members of the Senate, the U.S. Senate, that are saying, you got to give me something. If you want my vote, if you want my yes, you've got to add something to this. So, a perfect example of this is the Affordable Care Act. When the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, was passed, plenty of senators, plenty of members of the House of Representatives said no at first. They said, you give me this and then you'll get my vote. So the Affordable Care Act, which cost, who knows how much money it has cost the country, had money in it for, doing research on erectile dysfunction and all these other things that were kind of loosely tied to medical science, but really didn't have to do with helping people get affordable health care. But it's the way we do. It's the way we do business. I'm good, Bella. So we got a couple minutes. Who's got a question? I said that we would try at the end of the night to answer some questions. I am here with Dr. Aden Martin, political scientist.
No, definitely not.
You're not a political scientist?
No.
I think he is. Nobody has a question tonight? Well, while you're thinking of a question, let me give you some good stuff that's happening. So one of the things I've been telling you about Bon Jovi the last two nights, Bon Jovi is that big hair, right? Spandex wearing rock star from the 80s. You Give Love a Bad Name. I don't know.
Living on a Prayer.
Living on a Prayer, right? All of those
applicable to our current situation,
right? All those horrible 80s songs. He made a lot of money from it, right? And he's really turned into a philanthropist today. So he does a lot of work with veterans. He does a lot of work with the homeless, and he's really dedicated his life. So the last few nights, I told you some stories about him. And one of the stories that I found today, some really good people, as all this is happening, and I know probably a lot of you guys, whether you're watching this live now or you're going to watch it later at some other time, you're nervous, you're scared, you're anxious, and that's okay, because I think everybody is. But imagine if you were homeless right now. We, on any given night across our country, we have about 40,000 homeless veterans, people that have served our country with distinction, and they are living on the streets. And we've got even more than that outside of it, right? The largest group of people living on the streets today that are homeless are veterans. That's the largest demographic group. But there are a group of people now that are starting to band together, and they are called Impact Your World. This is the organization. And what they're doing is they are setting up sanitation stations across the country. So, what they have are these little kind of portable sinks and hand sanitizer, and they're setting up in locations where they know there are a high population of homeless people, so that these people who, if you think about it, I mean, you want to talk about a group of people that are probably high risk individuals to getting this disease. So they're setting up these areas where these people can come and they can clean themselves, and I believe that they can get their clothes cleaned, and they can try to keep themselves a little healthier, which I think is great, so sinks and toilets and all these different things. So it's nice to see that people are out there, and they're just doing a lot of good, right? And like I said to you yesterday, and it kind of goes with what John Bon Jovi is saying. He wrote this song and released it. Right now, we don't feel like we can do a lot, but we can do what we can. Spend your time, guys, doing what you can in life. Okay. Sydney, so adults who made under $99,000 a year get money from the government. Do kids also get that money? No. Good question. But Sydney, what happens is this.
Have you watched K-pop?
All right, Bella, hold on. Do you know what K-pop is?
Yes.
Oh, no. All right, hold on. I'll let Aiden deal with K-pop. Because I don't know what it is.
It's Korean pop music.
Oh my God, that's right, the K-pop. Oh my goodness, yeah. Christina and Bella, that's right. They were talking to me about K-pop. No, I haven't yet.
I'll give him ideas.
Right, hold on. I'll write that down for tomorrow. Watch K-pop. Okay, so Sydney, no, you're not going to get any money. That's the question. What they are going to do though is for married couples, you are going to get $500 per child, I believe, up to two children. So you'll get a check for $1,200, or the money's going to get put right into your account. And then, depending on how many dependents you have, they'll also put money into your account per dependent. So I want to bring up a touchy subject. Okay, I want to bring up something that's a little controversial, right? So there's a lot of teachers out there that are at home, and they make well under that $99,000. I make well under that $99,000. My real pay is working with all of you beautiful children. Anyway, I'm going to get that check. So even though I'm home, but I'm working from home, I am working, and trust me, I feel like I'm working more now than when school was regularly in session. I am probably going to get that check. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold the phone. So we're going to borrow money to give Mr. Martin money and other people that are still working and still earning their pay money. Why? Why would they do that? So what it comes down to is this. It's kind of simple, actually. What do they want me to do with that money, Aiden?
Spend it to stimulate the economy.
That's it, right? They want me to take that money and go buy stuff in small businesses. They want me to take that money and go spend it, because our economy is healthy when money is moving through the economy. So they're saying, hey, some people are out there. They are still working. They are still making some money. but we're going to give them money so that they can continue to inject money into the economy. So at least that's the plan right now. Again, it has not been 100% approved. Looks like probably what's today, Wednesday? I think it's probably going to be Friday. And what they're talking about is they're talking about um, it could be Monday where people are getting money into their bank accounts that quick. There's Christina. Prince Charles got diagnosed with corona after the royal family was recorded making a mockery of people with the virus. Thoughts? Aiden is our foreign correspondent for the British Isles. Aiden, what do you think?
I haven't really followed that. Did they really mock people?
I don't know, Christina. Maybe you're listening to too much K-pop. I'm not too sure. I did.
That may cause problems, but I don't think it has anything to do with the British Isles.
K-pop causes problems?
You heard Gangnam Style, right?
That's what I brought up to you. That's exactly the song I brought up.
Yeah, that's K-pop.
Oh, geez. Anyways, well, you know what, Christina? I don't know. You know what? I mean, a lot of this stuff, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think a lot of people are, what do we call it? Kind of diffusing the situation, right? They're making jokes. They're making memes. They're Black Swan. Well, I'll get right to it. K-pop is amazing. Gangnam Style is not good K-pop. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of people are trying to use humor to get through this, and I don't know what the situation is with Prince Charles. I'm hoping that. Oh, sure. I want to know the context. I always talk to you guys about that in class. I want to know so I want to know the context in which he said it. Okay. All right. So Veronica asks, "What's a corporation?" Okay. So Aiden and I open up Martin and Martin law firm. Right? We're a business. We're just a business. We have a couple hundred clients, right? We're a business. A corporation, now my younger son one day is probably going to take over the world and the galaxy, right? So he opens up
I'm seriously worried about
right.
that.
He opens up a company that makes nanobots, right? And he has this incredible idea. And he starts to sell stock in the business. So he says to people, if you give me some money, if you invest in my company, you buy stock. So you are a partial owner in this company. And then what he does is he takes that money and he makes the nanobot factory bigger and he sells more stuff. And then as the company grows, more people say, whoa, look at this company. I want to buy into that company. I want to invest in that company. So they buy stock and the company gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what we call a corporation. A corporation is a business that typically has a board of directors that operates and makes a lot of the major about that company. They usually have a chief executive officer, someone that is kind of the head and calling the shots of the company. But we're talking about Walmart. We're talking about Apple. We're talking about Microsoft, GM, Ford, GE, right? Golub is a corporation, but Golub is okay. Golub is more of a smaller corporation, right? It is a big corporation. They have stock, but they're a little different. They have stock, but they don't trade the stock on the stock market. Their stock is actually private stock. The people that invest in their company are their employees. So one of the things that Golub does to incentivize their employees is they say, Aiden, the marketing executive for Golub, you can buy stock in the company. And if Aiden owns 1,000 shares in the stock, he's going to do a better job because he wants the company to do better. But they don't openly trade the stock. So there are different types of corporations. But for that assignment, Veronica, what we're really talking about is companies like Walmart. Should Walmart be able to donate unlimited amounts of money to help get Aiden here elected president? Should they be able to donate unlimited amounts of money to get anybody elected to any level of government, whether it be Congress, governor, mayor, what have you? Does a corporation have speech? Should they be able to spend money like I spend money? And should we say that me spending money and a corporation spending money is fair? Meaning, or is it equitable? Somebody would say, well, Mr. Martin, you didn't have to be a teacher. You could have went out there and started a business. You could have started a corporation. You could have been a cajillionaire. Then you would have had the same thing. Our country is about equality, right? It's about opportunity. I made the decision to be a teacher. So it is fair. It is fair for a business to be able to do that. Aiden, let's hear it. Unlimited money into helping somebody get elected. He's thinking.
I don't think.
I think Aiden's a little flustered about the whole K. After we talked about K-pop.
It's not K-pop. No.
No.
I think it's not a problem with an easy solution because it's freedom of speech, and people argue that donating is a way of speech and freedom of speech. I think that could lead to corruption. Certainly, like if Walmart fueled a campaign for a Senate seat, and that senator would most likely support legislation that supported or benefited corporations like Walmart. And I think that, well, technically, yes, it would fall under the umbrella of free speech, but it's a dangerous rabbit hole. And I think there should be limits on campaign contributions.
I wonder, Veronica, should I ask him the question that I asked you guys in class about speech? Should I give him the scenario that we talked about for a while?
What?
I don't know if there's a delay. Is there a delay, you think? All right, I'll ask Aiden. Maybe we'll end on this. So one of the things that we did in class, Aiden, is we read about a Supreme Court case, Texas v. Johnson. Do you know that Supreme Court case? Okay, Bella wants to hear the question. So in 1989, well, actually, let's back up. In 1988, a man, last name Johnson, don't remember his first name, burned an American flag outside of the Republican National Convention. He was arrested, and he argued that burning an American flag should be protected under the First Amendment. It was his flag. He was burning it in protest. In that Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, an American has the right to burn a flag in protest under First Amendment protections. In 2003, we were one vote away in the Senate from having an amendment pass Congress it would still have had to have gone to the states, but we're one vote away from it in the Senate of having an amendment approved by Congress banning flag burning. So, Aiden, should an American be able to burn a flag in protest? Thoughts, concerns, comments?
I mean, it's not like you think fire, you think violence. So, I think the main argument against it is that it's a violent protest. I think, yeah, you should and be able to do that.
You should have the right to do it.
You should, yes.
That's all. That's it.
Well, it's
kind of straightforward for you.
Yeah, it's a sign of protest. It's certainly a signal. Like if you look outside and people are, like if President Trump looked outside the window and people were burning American flags, I mean, he would think he's doing something wrong if people are destroying the symbol of their nation because they think the nation is doing something so wrong that it's necessary to burn the flag to send a message. So yes, I think it should be allowed because it's
and you think President Trump, if he saw a flag burning, would say, "Oh, something must be wrong"?
It was an example.
Okay.
I think if
okay, that's fine.
I don't think there's much we could do to get through to Trump, but just an example.
Well, it is what it is. All right, before we sign off, I know there's a little bit of a delay. Any other questions outside of K-pop that you guys want us to address? And I will listen to Black Swan. I'm going to write that down on my list. Black Swan. Yeah, I think there is a delay. Well, while we're waiting for a question to roll in, and there might not be any questions. Oh, we went a little late tonight. Thank you, Aiden, for coming and talking to us. And can we get a reaction video? You want me to watch K-pop and then react to it? Oh yeah, sure. Why not? Why not? It might be my head exploding or something like that, but sure, absolutely. I'll give you my reaction to it. But anyways,
like a live. I think they mean like as you're watching it.
Oh, as I'm watching it,
you would have to edit it.
Oh, I guess I could probably try that. Maybe not tonight. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow because it's a little late. But thanks again for Aiden, and as always, guys, thanks for turning up and hanging out with us. I miss you. I wish that we were back together, and I wish that we were doing our normal thing. I miss being there. I miss getting up and shaving. I think by the time we get back, I'm going to be like Duck Dynasty, but. I hope everybody's safe. Remember that tomorrow, every day, 11 to 12, I'm going to do office hours. So please feel free to come and hang out. And I hope that everybody, like I said, is doing well. And we'll see you soon. Have a good night, guys.